Imagine yourself looking out at the vast sea before you. You reach down and you put a hand into the water and you scoop it up towards you. Immediately the water starts leaking through your fingers until the hand is empty. That water is a man's life. From birth to death, it is always slipping through our hands until it is gone, along with all that you hold dear in this world.
I'm Luke, and what's the point anyway? I believe it's to follow the way, but let's see what others think. I hope you'll enjoy these conversations as we explore this question together.
What's the Inquirers podcast?
Does
Mount Mary.
Cheers, boys. Good to see you, mate.
Are we recording?
we're recording?
I'd actually like to talk about that sort of example,
What example?
like those sorts of comments and how they're viewed.
What comment?
We can talk about it as we go, but those sorts of moments for me, I lose a bit of faith in our culture, Luke, as I touched on a bit earlier.
What months?
Well,
You say good to see you both.
I'll say something that's really trying to be inclusive and say something small that where it's just like fobbed off.
Yeah.
I think that's just a small modicum of the culture that we live in.
I think that's a mirror to a lot of the things that you do.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. If I was to say the same thing, you'd be like, oh, he's got his radio voice on. Would you agree, Luke?
That's different.
Okay, of course it is, because it's you.
No. What I'm talking about is I'll say, hey, it's really good to see you both. Right? So it's actually a genuine comment about, hey, mate, sometimes it actually is good just to give positive affirmations about catching up.
Couldn't agree more, mate.
But when the remark is, yeah,
No, it's just like,
I just think I think that's a little bit less endearing, and I wish we were.
we're on.
Oh, mate, I'll be here tomorrow.
We're on.
And then what's the point?
Hey?
You know?
The point
I
doesn't
just-
really
that's
matter, and you're probably thinking too much about it.
Yeah, well, maybe maybe that's what makes it different.
But I think,
Are we on?
We're on.
Yeah.
I was going to do an intro, but
Do an intro.
Your
Give
intro,
us an intro.
we've just got
The sand through the man's hands.
we've just got a 2-minute insight into the two guests that are joining me today. Bit of a different. What's the point anyway? Joining me are two of my sort of oldest and best friends, Josh Kennedy and Tomi Johnston. So Josh has been probably close. I mean, you're probably close to my oldest mate. I think since 1999.
Yeah, isn't it?
However far that goes back, 25 years or whatever. And Tomi, best man at my wedding. So both are probably the two people in my life that have similar but very different worldviews to me, and that we sort of thrash it out together, often on a little group text thread that we've got, and certainly in person as well. So I thought it'd make a really interesting episode to bring the two boys in the chair, and we're actually recording this live in person today, unlike most. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a round table. Each of us will share our perspective on what is the point anyway, and we'll just go into a bit of open conversation. I think the guys are going to put me in the spotlight. So, Josh, you can kick it off. What's the point anyway, mate?
Thanks, Luke. I think for me, what's the point anyway? Do we really truly know? I think you're sort of aligned to your values that you've learned along the way. If I sort of think about myself, my upbringing, inevitably we're products of our environment. So for me, the point is, relationships, time spent with people that you care about, family, friends, kids, your next generation, leaving a legacy behind in that sense. But I think, it all comes down to, for me, probably relationships and the memories you leave for your kids, and in that sense, what you leave behind.
What if you don't have kids?
As I said, you're a product of, in my view, you're a product of your environment. Everyone's at a different stage of life, different meaning, different search. I'm at that stage because I have kids. So, I think about my life now, and your priorities change. Your values sort of remain the same, but your priorities change. Your focus can change a little bit. But overall, I think, if I refer to your podcast, I've listened to most episodes, mate, and my sort of gut feel is that everyone has differing views, some way or another. Everyone's in the process of trying to figure it out. Everyone's shaped by their life experience, and influenced by it. And just at different phases of figuring out what is the point anyway. You might have whilst a lot of the guests might have a star to follow in terms of they believe in Jesus, they believe in higher power, what that actually means on a day-to-day basis, and their search for truth on a day-to-day basis, I think, is very heavily influenced by their environment. And I wouldn't be so, I think, ignorant to think that mine hasn't been either.
When do you think you realise relationships were the most important part?
I think through time. I mean, I've, again, my upbringing around the family, your priorities. I think, when I'm just through life experience, I'm still pretty young, so I'm not claiming to know it all, but that when you're surrounded by good people that you trust, people that you feel comfortable with, you're happier. Your life's a lot more enjoyable, rewarding, fulfilling. So stuff like this, it fills the cup, so to speak. And the more you can do that, I think the more fulfilling and life can be, and the more memories you create. And for me, that's, if I didn't have kids, it'd still be the same. It'd be family, friends, creating memories, creating relationships, trying to leave a good impression and do good in most things that you try.
Luke, thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Tom.
You've probably heard that a few times now. How many podcasts have you had now? 20?
No, I think it's 20,
15?
maybe 12.
Yeah.
More than 10.
Do you think, and we'll get to your answer, but after listening to 12 or so guests, do you think your answer to what's the point has shifted from first episode to now?
Yeah, I think it has.
So tell us, what's the point from your view, and then let's talk about how it shifted maybe over the time.
Do you want me to tell you the point? Well, that is in right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the point?
So what's the point? My answer's definitely changed. I would articulate it. I actually just changed the intro to the podcast, and I said I believe the point is to follow the way, and I left it deliberately vague and sort of unclear, because I think what happens when, particularly in this day and age, where someone gives an answer that has a religious connotation, for better or worse, that often has negative. People view that in a negative way. So what the way is in the book of Acts in the New Testament, the way is what they called the early apostles that followed Jesus of Nazareth. So they were followers of the way. And I think the way compared to modern Christianity, it's almost like two completely different things. So what was the way? The way was Jesus coming to say to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that's ultimately, I think, what the point is. I think it is to love God and to appreciate all that we do have in this world and to know where we came from. And then to know that our purpose is to fulfill that will, which is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Ties in really clearly, I think, with Josh's answer about relationships. I think whether one is a believer or not, whether one has faith or not, and faith's a really interesting topic, which we'll get into. I think everyone has faith. It's just what we put our faith in. But I think we know through our learned experiences that selflessly loving another person without an expectation of anything in return gives us meaning beyond anything else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love the answer. I think my answer would be very similar without the religious components to the comments. So, heavy relationships, but just carrying out life with a respect of not only yourself but of others, and to treat, to treat people the way you'd love to be treated in return. So, without putting a religious connotation to the comments, I think we're all pretty similar and fairly aligned, which I think is a great sort of segue into the faith component of it. Before we get into that, though, what do you think has changed in your view of what is the point, maybe say a few months ago prior to starting the podcast to today? And has that shifted based on the experiences you've had with your guests, or is that just something that's naturally sort of occurred?
I think it's a little bit both. To your first point, I think I can answer the question, what's the point anyway? And we might all say some version, and I've heard it from guests on the show that have different beliefs around faith, that the point is broadly to love, right? The next follow-up question to that is, I think, where you get into the weeds of it, is why? If it's to love, why? If I'm an existentialist, which is more or less where my sort of worldview was maybe 5 years ago, then why? Why would we love someone else? It should be all just about self, maximizing our time on this random earth, and if we do a few good things here in the way, hopefully good comes back, but ultimately it's about me, right? So I think the why should we love and why is the point to love is where faith comes into it. Without having a belief in the testimony of Jesus, which I never did, I couldn't really stand behind an answer to say that the point is to love. If you had really pushed me 5 years ago, I would have thought it's really just to sort of clock life on my own terms and make the most of it for what I can. But
really,
yeah. So how has my answer evolved over the last 6? There you go. So do you want me to answer? I'll answer that for the last 6 to 12 months. So, I mean, I became Christian like 3 years ago, and you guys have followed that journey pretty closely. And I think you've probably had a front row seat to my personality and behavior through that period. And being, I think the reality is a lot of people that have faith don't follow the way, and their behavior is not attractive to people around them. And I think I'm fully guilty of that. So I had a shift in what I believed 12 months ago, maybe a little bit more, from a feeling that we're in the end times of the world, to actually the Bible tells a story of fulfilled eschatology being the study of end times. And what that means is that the kingdom of earth is here now. There is no end to the world coming, and we're here for a purpose. It's not to resist the devil and go off to a place when we die that's called heaven. It's actually to live out in accordance with what we've learned here right now. And this world is what we make it. So that really changes worldview and behavior in a big way. But over the last, so I sort of changed that doctrine around what I thought the scriptures were actually saying, and I'm really, really confident that that's what it's saying now. But then that's taken some time to actually then change in behavior. So I think you guys can work it out without being believers necessarily yourself. If you think that we're in the last 10 years of the world, and that anyone that is a Christian is going to go to heaven when it all blows up, and anyone that's not is going to go to hell, whatever you think that is, then what you're going to do in your day-to-day life is going to be totally different to what you're going to do if your answer is what I said now, that we live, the kingdom of God is here now, it's a spiritual reality, and we are the priests and kings here on earth that live as God's image bearers to bring fruit to the world, right? It's a totally different way of living. There's a lot more, you're not living in sort of fear. There's not like, and you guys probably got this from me, where it's sort of like, you've got to believe because, all this bad stuff is happening. Versus now, I'm just a lot more patient. I've got a lot more time for people. I've got a lot more empathy for why people believe what they believe, why people do what they do. So a really good example that we've spoke about sort of offline is like my episode with Stephen Long, which is probably only a month ago, 6 weeks ago. When I first started the podcast, I thought it would be more that I thought maybe I'll bring on different guests. I definitely didn't think it would always be Christian, but I thought I'd maybe bring them on maybe to expose the worldview a little bit more. Ask questions that sort of put people in a little bit of a hole and put them in a trap around why they believe what they believe, and show the issues with that compared to other guests I bring on that would articulate a more positive worldview, which was similar to mine. And you guys know I'm a naturally sort of my natural state is to argue. And I don't even do that like because I don't like people or whatever. I just sort of I typically get kicks out of like having an argument. It's how I sort of like exercise my brain. But with Stephen who came on, I shifted sort of even in the initial interactions with him. So he's grew up in the church. He's homosexual. He was a minister in a satanic temple. Now he's outside the faith, runs his own sort of content series and so forth. And what I found is it was actually far more beneficial for me. And this guy's been like ostracized from the church. He's, people tell him his whole life he's lived saying he's a devil, he's a demon, he's going to burn in hell forever. I mean, it's not that loving, right, from these supposed followers of the way that are surrounded by him. So what I found is I could actually bring this guy on who's got a totally different worldview to mine, and I get so much more out of that conversation, just having a friendly conversation and listening to this guy, let him be heard, talk to me a little about how I see some things that are different to him, and ending the call wishing him all the best on what he does with his future, rather than thinking I need to convert this guy into this faith, otherwise he's going to burn in 10 years.
Yeah. When you say you got a lot out of it, did you actually learn anything? Did you think differently after that conversation?
Yep. Yeah.
In how?
The whole topic of homosexuality is a really interesting one. I think from a cultural perspective as well as a biblical perspective, because it's a conservative view that is sort of anti-homosexuality. It's not exclusive, and modern conservatism has alignment with Christianity, but I actually almost think now Christianity has more alignment with like progressive left rather than conservative right. But I sort of grew up with a more right-wing view of homosexuality in general, and then a biblical view which I thought was quite clear. So in bringing Stephen on, I forced myself to actually really look at that topic in a lot more detail, which opened my eyes to, I think, so there's two parts. There's a biblical component of it, but then there's the cultural component. And I don't even need to get into the biblical component with you guys, but I can see now that I think now we have some really like overt homosexual culture in the world. And a lot of the reason for that is because these guys have just been ostracized by everyone for so long, and the blame lays at the feet of Christians as much as anyone. So like Stephen made the point that when he joined the Satanic Temple, he's like, he doesn't believe in Satan as a supernatural enemy of God figure, and nor do I. But he's like, when he joined it, he's like, I think he's about our age, so mid-30s. He's like, I joined these guys. He's like, for 30 odd years before, I was a demon everywhere. I've been told that I'm worthless, that I'm a piece of trash. And I come into this group and we're all misfits that have all grown up the same way. And there's a feeling of like connectivity together.
Of course.
So I now have a greater understanding of why a movement like the Satanic Temple arises. That's not these guys that are wicked and evil, but they're actually people that have just been totally ostracized, and they find they're seeking loving relationships and community like anyone else.
Correct. But it doesn't change your view on the Christian stance?
Well, I think they're two separate questions. So it changes my view on the cultural, from a cultural perspective, just day to day, what do I think? But no, my view from what does the Bible actually teach about this has definitely changed.
So on that note, if I can rewind perhaps 2 years.
Yeah.
You were adamant that the Bible was black and white, clear as day. Do you still see that view, have that view?
Yeah, I think that it's... I'm trying to think how I can answer this as simply as I can.
Well, I'm going to put it this way. Your intro to your podcast is that you disagree with more Christians than you agree with.
Yeah.
Christians that have been, inverted commas, studying the Bible for decades.
Yeah.
Whilst you very intellectual for 3 years.
Yeah.
And there's so many differing views and interpretations. My feeling of listening to the people on the podcast, in terms of the question of what the point is anyway, does anyone really know for fact? You can have faith and believe, but my sort of understanding of it and hearing the different guests is that everyone's on a journey and shaped by their life experience. It can be anchored by our belief and faith in God or faith in a higher power, but the interpretation of how you apply that to your day-to-day life is so grey.
Yes,
and I think it's evident by the fact that you've consistently changed your view. And if I had have asked you that, have you changed? You say, yes, of course I have. But if you were sitting here 2 years ago, you were adamant, black and white. This is I'm no, not trying to be smart here, but nail yourself at the cross and the fact that this is I believe this way,
mm-hmm.
And yet 2 years later or 12 months later, 2 months later, your view has changed.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the Bible speaks about sort of fruits of the Spirit, right? So what are the fruits of someone that has the Spirit and is a follower? And one of them is sort of patience. There's patience and humility and traits that I'm naturally weak in, really weak. So changes that I've had, and I think I sort of addressed this in my initial question. I think particularly my first year and a half of having what was a radical worldview change, going from a pretty staunch atheist to a believer, I think the fruits on display for me in my first year and a half were pretty poor. So I look back on things that I did then with humility now, and things that I did not just the last 2 years, but 5 years ago and a week ago, and realizing actually that maybe I don't know it all. Maybe, I've had so many radical changes in the way that I see things, particularly over the last 3 years, that I now think as each one of those has happened, I've grown in humility to understand how to approach the next one. So would I be as aggressive and black and white on an issue that there's division on tomorrow as I was 2 years ago? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, my understanding of the scriptures has increased immeasurably. And I think there are things that are in the scriptures that are really clear, and that I would probably... There's hills that I die on and there's hills that I wouldn't. There's hills that I'm still working out, and there's things I'm like, I just about stake everything on this being this way.
Do you think your personality, maybe your behaviour has changed? Do you think your personality has changed a lot in the last 3 years?
I think we are who we are. I think, and I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, the Bible will speak about, we become a new creation, but that new creation is here on earth. It's the same person, right? We're all born with attributes. Like I was telling Ash Butters, who was on the show recently, like she was, a full-blown like alcoholic, went to AA and is now, fortunately come out the other side in a really, really good place. And we sort of spoke about on that, like she became an alcoholic because and we were talking about whether it's, a trait that you learn or that, are we born with it? And I think it's clear, like, I don't think I would become an alcoholic because I don't have that. I have that willpower and ability to have 5 drinks or 10 drinks or 1 drink and say, no, I don't need another one. Whereas most people that are alcoholics will be like, they have one and they just can't stop at one and next minute it's 20. So there's traits that I was born with that I'm going to die with. I think that's clear. How I use those traits and my awareness of those traits has changed a lot over time, particularly the last 12 to 24 months. And I would say the why that's changed is, the reason that's changed is because I have a why to my answer of what the point is anyway.
Yep. All right.
Should we shift to you, Tommy?
Hey?
Josh gave his, what's the point is anyway?
You can. Look, I echo, both your sentiments about the purpose. I think what's interesting is that, what we learn, particularly through my personal experiences, life will throw anything and everything at you along the way. And if you can just hold yourself upright by, as we've said, surrounding yourself with a really good family network and friends, holding yourself to strong principles and values, that's going to go a long way, to just continue to evolve throughout that journey. To answer the question in its truest form, I'm going to be brutally honest and say I don't really know. And I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. I put a lot of it down to really viewing life in thirds. And I feel like I'm in the start of the second phase of my life. And I think that phase, well, for me, is centered a lot around questioning a lot of things in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, existential ones, no doubt, Luke. Things like, you know, why are we here? You know, where do we come from? What happens after all this? They're fundamental primal questions that I think we don't ask of each other enough. But on top of that, I sometimes I find it really hard just to get through the day, you know, and I ask myself, what's the point of going to work? You know, what's the point of going to the gym or whatever it is that floats your boat? So, but I think that the question that the answers that we always fall back on is that it is a journey. Tomorrow I might have an answer. The next day it's probably going to be different. Luke, your answer 3 months ago is different to the one today. And I think that's probably forms a little bit of a direction for us, is that, you know, none of us have all got this figured out, you know, perfectly. It's not a linear thing, life. It's going to throw anything and everything at you. But I think planting your flag on something, values, faith, whatever it is, will just hold you in good stead. And it'll just help you weather that storm. But yeah, I think fundamentally, to be brutally honest, I don't know. And I'm okay with that, but I definitely think I'm in a phase where I think about it more than ever.
Are you comfortable with giving an answer that you don't know? Because so Steve,
Not really.
yeah, because some people are.
But isn't it common, mate? Like, aren't we all in the same boat? Like, I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
And I don't think you do either. And I don't think any of your guests have either. It's just sort of like we pin ourselves to our values, and I think we position in a way that makes us feel okay. And
I'm not saying
I think evidence is
saying it's a bad answer. I'm saying that, like Stephen, who we're speaking of, he said ultimately at the end, he's like, I don't know, and I'm comfortable giving that answer. Whereas some people are uncomfortable giving that answer. So that's the reason for my question. I'm not trying to probe on that being an insufficient answer.
totally. I'm more than comfortable with the answer. But again, I think, how many times have you sat in, you know, across the table from someone or anyone where it's very easy to give lip service around how they're feeling, where they're at, what do they want in life, you know, whether it's the white picket fence, it's a happy marriage, it's kids. And once they've got all that, they're still as miserable and, you know, sort of uncentered as you've ever seen. So I think it's okay to give an answer where we don't know, as long as that's well balanced with an appetite to continue to learn and evolve. I think that's what keeps me on the edge, and I like being on in that sort of space.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think the answer, a humble answer of I don't know, is a far better answer than a staunch answer that is the wrong one.
I wouldn't judge either way. My life experience tells me that my journey is very different to yours. It's different to Josh's. And if Josh was to sit here and tell us this is his reason, and this is his point, I don't feel like I'm in any position to make a judgment on that, because I've never stood in his shoes, ever. I don't know what it's like to be him for a second. So I just take it on good faith and take him on face value and let his actions and his intent sort of guide me as to whether or not I can lean into that or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I say I think it's a better answer, it's not judging the person that's answering either, but I think the evidence or the fruit in one's life from an answer of I don't know is typically going to be better from the one that has a staunch answer that's the wrong one.
I tend to agree. Like, I would lean more into someone that, particularly on such a big question, I'd probably lean into more someone that probably didn't know.
Humbly working it out.
Yeah, because I think we all, you know, we've all got reasonable head on our shoulders to know that, you know, we're kidding ourselves. We don't have this figured out. This is a tough caper, and like Josh said, I think we're still relatively young, and as I've said, I think we're in the start of the second phase of our lives. So for one of us to think that we've got it all worked out, I'd struggle with that. But again, that's not to say that I judge it and completely dismiss it.
I'll ask you a random question, and I'll tell you where I think this is going. But who would you both say is the most successful person in the world today?
Define success.
Well, I'm not. I'm just asking you. So you'll have to define it in your answer.
I mean, I love a movie quote, Luke. You know, like the best of them. You guys a fan of The Notebook by any chance?
No.
There's a really cool quote in The Notebook, and I resonate with it a lot, particularly when I get asked questions like that, which I don't really like. I don't like those sort of questions. But he says, I'm a common man. I have common thoughts, and I've led a common life. But in life, I've failed as much as I've succeeded. But I love my wife. I love my life. And to you, I wish you that kind of success. I think what he's basically saying is none of this matters. Like fancy cars, the money, the building big empires. I think at the end of the day, that's ultimately unfulfilling. You know, love's an interesting topic. It's probably been a topic that you've sort of, you know, offline have put onto the fold. But I think there is something in it for sure. You know, can you imagine someone without any love in their heart being successful? I'm not so sure.
No. Well, so the reason I asked the question, I got when Amelia was born, which is 4.5 years ago. I bought her the full suite of books, and that's this series. It's called Little People, Big Dreams. It's like the life story of all these sort of, I'm doing it now, air quote, successful people throughout history, right? Writers, fashion designers, sports stars, movie stars, inventors, all these, and it's their story, because that was me 4.5 years ago. I think that's what society would say. These are the successful people. I ended up throwing out all the books, so I completely changed my mind on what success is. My answer is far more like yours. Like the most successful people I know, no one knows them, because success is in the things that you're not necessarily getting attributes for. What I think is interesting is that we'll have this conversation. We'll talk about things like love, and we'll talk about relationships, and you'll give that quote from the Notebook. And I know you love a movie quote, but I think it's a really good one. But those attributes arguably don't serve you well if you want to be having a book written about you in 20, 30 years' time. Yet what I find is interesting is that we can all have different worldviews and different faiths, and we'll answer things like love and relationships. But to become the most successful worldly person, you sort of need to not have those. You need to be probably more ruthless. You need to be willing to have a lack of balance. So I find it interesting, this total sort of dichotomy between attributes you need for worldly success and attributes that we all know we need for actual life success. Because the most successful people in the world, as far as the sort of papers tell you, are generally the most miserable. Or often the most miserable.
I think that's a huge generalisation.
Really?
Yeah.
Should we go through some of them?
Hey? Oh, I think some of them, but not all of them. I think you can be very successful and, not necessarily build an empire, but create something, as long as you're doing it in the right way with good people meeting good people. You're not doing it in a ruthless manner to try and step on everyone to get up the ladder.
But that will be at your detriment. In terms of the ladder, it's at your detriment. And I'm not promoting.
But I'm saying you don't. It doesn't need to be that. It doesn't always need to be that way.
What way?
Climbing the ladder, stepping on people to climb the ladder and putting the bridges.
I think the top of the ladders are full of the people that are most willing to step on toes.
And maybe at the very, very top.
Yeah, that's my point.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm not promoting a lifestyle where we live as paupers. I think going and doing good and building things, your own empire, whether that's a small business and your own family, and that's I think what we're here for. But I'm talking like the top of the ladder. The top of the ladder is often people are most willing to forego those things because you have to.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Luke and I were talking about culture today, which I think is a good little segue because my point is our culture today is obsessed with image and notoriety. You've got to be constantly on some sort of feed or constantly seeking attention, to be heard, to be seen. Whereas my profile and me just personally, I don't resonate with that at all. I actually find a lot of value in the anonymity and the privacy and the mystery of actually not really being beholden to the current culture that we're in.
Mm.
And again, I think we live in a time, without getting too deep, where I don't think it's my favourite time to be alive, and I don't think it'd be my most enjoyable. If I had a preference, I'd probably rewind, maybe 60 years ago. If I had a choice, I think it would have been a much better time to be alive. And I think these sort of questions that we're asking would be far more clear.
Mm. My instinct is to totally agree with you, but to play devil's advocate, is it remember that movie Midnight in Paris?
Yeah,
I love that movie. Where he was, I don't know what era he was living in, and he's like, could be to go back to the 30s or the 20s, and then he went back to all these eras, and they were talking like, if we had lived in the 1800s, that was the glory days. Do you think every era and
yes, I agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I think it's like the old footy player, probably like Josh in 10 years' time, who would say, back in my day, these things wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have allowed that. And footy was so much better back then.
Yeah,
so much better.
But that's not what he's saying.
No, but I think what he's saying is that,
is the past always better?
That's right. I think what he was.
I don't think so. I think if you asked your parents, they'd be like, no way.
Mm.
No way. What? It's better today than it is.
No, I don't think that their childhood was way better than their parents'.
I personally believe that. I think I couldn't be a stronger advocate of it. I think it's even my childhood and looking back at it versus some of your kids today. I just think, wow, like I wouldn't trade mine for a second, personally. And that affects me a lot, just in my worldview of things.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I can rewind a little bit, that your quote, like that's not you. That quote from The Notebook, "I'm a simple man." Da da da. That's not you.
That's not me.
No, you work according to the people that know you. You work like a dog. You work
like everyone else.
Hey,
like a lot of people.
No, well, like a lot of people, but
I agree. But it's the common man.
No, it's not a common man. No, I think there's more to it than that. You're not trying to. There's an element of wanting to build something for yourself.
What do you think the quote meant? What the quote meant?
Hey,
what do you think the quote meant to you?
No, but if I'm referring to that movie and what he did, which was just stay at home and build his own house.
No, that's not why he built the house.
it doesn't. Let's not get into the nuance of the actual move. But I just don't think that applies to you because your aspirations are bigger than that. You've got a place. You've just bought a place in, like you've got 4 houses. You got 4 houses, mate. Like that's not a common man. Is that fair?
I think it's I think it's a fair criticism. I think
I'm just saying, like and again, you referred to lip service before. I think that's what it was, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that, and what we're talking about, there's balance, and I think you can have both.
I think you're at the phase of your life where you're working out what that balance.
What I'm saying is, the houses, they don't define me in any way, shape, or form. I don't. My level of my life. If my life was measured on a odometer reading, I don't think buying a house overly, doesn't reach the highest of highs in my life. It's far from it. That's more of a financial decision more than anything. But again, the purpose of the quote was really to basically say that success. I think I'm smart enough, and I know I've got a good understanding of who I am and what makes me tick to understand that those things aren't the answer. As simple as that. Now, I'm not saying that this is the answer that I mean, and I'm not kidding myself thinking that I do, but I know what isn't, and sometimes that's half the battle. I say it a lot. It's like, I say this a lot every day, where it's like me ordering lunch every day at work. I don't necessarily know what I want, but I know what I don't want, and I think I'm halfway there if I know that.
Yep. Has that changed?
I think you're a little bit different to the common man. That's all I'm saying, in a good way.
Well, I mean, who is the common man, though?
Yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on it.
No, I'm not.
I think the genesis of the question was success, and I think the answer is not meant to be taken too literally, other than to think that the bells and whistles for me it's pretty obvious that they're not the answer.
No, but I think it was a throwaway. I just want to change it, and it's not. I'm not changing you, but I just change the point of saying that they're not fulfilling, right?
Yep.
But I think there's a certain manner you can do it, which it is. If you work hard for something, and you achieve, and you buy that house, and you've worked hard, and you're sharing that with whoever it is, the people that you care about, that is fulfilling.
Well,
is that not?
I mean,
is that not fulfilling?
I'll give you an example, right? And
is that not fulfilling to sit back and go, shit, I've worked hard for this, and I'm enjoying it?
Well, it's a bit different. Like, to go personal, something that not necessarily, like, I'm happy to share this, but like, one of them's on the Gold Coast, and one of them is really centered around, being close with my mum and making sure that, she's got a house where we can call home when she's there. And another one recently was from my dad. So it's not about the house. The house is it doesn't matter. It's like, this is a home for family and for me to connect with them in time, because that's what's important to me.
Correct.
So it's not, I'm not some guy that's buying property because I think it's a great opportunity to buy on the Gold Coast, and I think that's just where the property is going. Don't get me wrong, there's an element of value in it.
Yes.
There's a value element, don't get me wrong. But it's a connection piece for me. Fundamentally. I think that's an important element that may not be understood.
It is understood. It is understood, but I think it all ties in together. Like, you're not doing it blindfolded. There is a certain financial.
Buying a house is a serious financial undertaking. Absolutely, and it's not.
But you're thinking long-term benefit, as opposed to both financially, but
Oh, mate, the financial benefit is an ancillary one.
Okay. So, I mean, this is an interesting question for me because we've all known each other a long time, and I think now got to certain points in life and looked, and probably they're very different to what we thought it might have been. If we go back to, let's say, when we were like 16 years of age, and you told your 16-year-old self then, here is what you're doing, or you're all doing now when you're 36, what do you reckon you would have thought back then? So, I mean, what are
Again, it goes back to it.
what are you now? You know, how would you summarize this situation?
Again, I think ultimately I'm just a common man going through the early stages of his second phase of life. And again, I find it easy to break life down. Like me at 16 versus 36, it's just the amount of information I've gathered, the amount of life experiences that I've endured, mean that I'm totally and fundamentally so different. Still have the same traits, personality, some weeded out, some for the better, but absolutely chalk and cheese. Again, I'll go personal in the sense of when I was a young boy, I grew up idolizing my old man, thinking that literally my life and the whole universe revolved around him.
Mm-hmm.
He was a footy player. All I want to do is play footy. That's it. Now, again, what we now know about footy players or whoever it is, you hear it like they're actually just human beings that are ultimately flawed and that have got vices and they go through the same, pressure cooker that life throws at them as much as it does you. And, my dad had his battles well publicised to a point where I was a very, very old 15, 16-year-old boy that had seen a lot of things that not probably a lot of kids at my age and even younger were experiencing. So my lens at 15 or 16 was different to what it was at 12, and it was completely different when I was 20, 30, ongoing. So, again, I just think it comes back to the life experiences that I've had. As much as I didn't, and I wish I didn't have to go through them, and I wish it was all, very, rosy time and I could just be a kid. I'm also pretty grateful that I went through them, because without them, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So in many ways, it shaped me and formed me into who I am. But now I'm very much, it's humbled me to know that, as per my answer, I just think I'm a man currently living in Melbourne that's currently going through the second phase of his life, and just trying to navigate through that phase, that's where I'm at.
So, like, if I said to you, I'm sitting down with a 16-year-old Tomi, I'm like, in 20 years' time, you'll own your own business, you'll have 4 houses, you'll have a long-term partner, you won't have kids yet, you never played AFL footy, but you had a pretty successful amateur career. What are you thinking then?
I would have been shattered.
Yeah.
If you had told me that at 16, that would be, and I wouldn't have really heard anything you'd had to say just then until you said, mate, you didn't play AFL footy. That's all I would have heard. And I would have said, that is an absolute failure and what a waste of life. Like, that was, again, but I think that's the beauty of being a kid is, everything's just so black and white, simple, it lacks any nuance. Footy was everything to me. But again, I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it.
So what about you, Josh? So, chat to you at 16, you're like, you're going to have an incredibly successful AFL career, you'll you'll win a premiership, you'll be a captain, you'll play almost 300 games, you'll get married to a Colombian girl that, from the other side of the world, you'll learn to speak a little bit of broken Spanish with her, you'll have 2 kids, you'll finish your career and you'll be working in your old man's business doing, in plumbing and building. What are you thinking?
What am I saying at 16?
Yeah.
Where the hell's Colombia? What's that? No, mate. No, I would have taken it. I would have taken it.
I would have thought.
Yeah, 100%. More than
You would have taken it, for sure.
So, but I think that doesn't, although I think the point here is that the external, again, air quotes success, it doesn't define me as a person either. I'm proud of that, but I think it's helped in the transition as well. It's what I did, but it's not who I am. And that's an important distinction, and easier said than done. But it's just that was that, and now I'm on to the next phase, still trying to figure it out, and like everyone else, and rolling with the punches and see where it goes.
Have you ever had any sort of like existential sort of crisis? Because Tomi, you probably have had a few, and you probably, you spoke about it, that you've now reached this point where you're starting to sort of question things a bit more. Your journey.
Why is that though? What do you mean? What's the crisis that? I don't think it's a crisis that led Tomi to that. I think it's just life, isn't it? It's just age and time and.
Yeah. I think it just comes circumstantial for me. Like my if I talk about my dad as an example, just surface level sort of stuff. Like, he's sort of at an age now where like he's starting to fall. Like, he'll have a shower and fall in the shower. Like, he's now become the role reversal is pretty powerful. Where like I've quickly become a parent. Like, I'm a carer in many ways, as I am with my brother's sister. So I worry about things like mortality a lot, and I seriously like, and I think it comes back to like, what's the point? Like, I think my old man said to me one day, it was pretty profound. Like, he's 67 in 8 days, but I remember he said to me like 6 months ago, he's like, the average life expectancy for a male is 82. And he's like, I'm in the back end. Like, I might have 10 left. That's it, if I'm lucky. Makes me think about just the time I've got left with my old man. So then I'll have an existential crisis about, as annoying as he is to me, like, and he calls me 10 times a day, like, I want to, maybe I should answer that call. As much as annoying as he is, I don't know if you think about it with your mum, Luke, or your dad, but I just think about that a bit, a lot.
My dad talks in months at the moment. He just says he's got to get to January.
Yeah, my point is, though, is like,
and then he gets to January, he goes, I didn't expect to get here, so
yeah,
March.
3 years ago, 4 years ago, I wouldn't even thought of this, but it's amazing how these things creep up on you, and we're quoting a lot here, but like the Cat Stevens song, I'll go to it a lot with the father and son. It is a full circle of life where I was a kid, literally idolising my old man. I literally wanted to be him. Literally. Like, my whole life and universe revolved around him. And every time I wanted to kick the footy with him, he's too busy, like he was working or doing whatever. To literally now today where like he'll call me 10 times a day to hang out and I can't because I've got to go to work or I've got to carry out my life. It's just funny how it works. But I think about that more than you can imagine. So that, though, if that's your question about thinking existentially about things in life a lot, yeah, I think about that. That's one example. There's probably 10 I could give you right now, but I'm interested to hear Josh's ones because I don't know if he thinks like that as much as maybe someone like I do, in a sense.
What about the time you've
Don't take this the wrong way, and don't take it literally either, but
I'll take it how you say it.
can you resonate on any level with what I've just said?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's like, of course I can.
Okay.
And to think otherwise, I think.
I didn't say that I did or didn't.
Hey?
I didn't say that I didn't.
No, I think you implied the fact that I didn't. Of course I can, mate.
I'm keen to hear.
Hey?
I'm keen to hear.
But I think that's the whole basis of my life decisions around being in Melbourne, being close to family, time with family, time relationships, time with people. It's the most important thing.
Anything keep you up at night? You ever worry about things to the point where like you lose breath? You can't,
Till I lose breath. Mate, a lot of things keep me up at night. But I don't think it's any different to anyone else. You know, you've whether it's, you know, your family and making sure everyone's happy, healthy, that, you know, absolutely a financial element that would, you know, when you're supporting a family, that would keep you up at night. There'd be same, you know,
anything specific?
No different to anyone else.
Anything specific or not really?
Anything specific?
Yeah.
That would keep me up at night. Go on.
I'll give you a question. I'll maybe just segue into a question. When you stop playing, how long you play footy for? 17 years?
16.
16 years, right? Do you ever worry, like, do you ever have an identity crisis post-footy where you're like, wow, you know? And again, I don't take this the wrong way. It's like, you're a superstar of the game. Like, we probably don't even appreciate that. And that's probably a conversation for another time on a different pod. But to now, like, you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning to, you know, work in a family business. Do you ever sort of, you know, and I've seen it happen in my personal life with family and stuff, where that transition is tough, really tough. And you sort of feel like you lose your sort of, you know, I think, you know, there's a connotation with footy players, particularly at that level where, you know, life's just completely different and it's another level and you lose that. Yeah,
no doubt about it. It's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. I think it's probably harder now than it was 2 years ago, but that doesn't keep me awake at night. Not the fact of not from a self identity point of view.
Yeah.
Okay. It just, you know, what keeps me awake at night, if anything, is can this new lifestyle provide the lifestyle that's going to support and give everything to my immediate family and give us the lifestyle that we want. That keeps me up at night. It's not an identity. I think I've been fortunate to have a lot of great role models. I've been fortunate to have a lot of great friends that kept me very grounded. And I've had no, like I love the fact that I had a career and I love it if someone would to recognise me, and I love the fact that I can have a positive impact on a kid by saying g'day or whatever it may be, kicking the footy or, you know, sending a video from the Swans. You know, that stuff's great, and it's not lost on me the impact you can have on people in that way. But it's it doesn't keep me up at night from a selfish sort of ego perspective that who am I now? No. what keeps me up is how can I make it all work?
Did you want to follow up, or can I push you a bit on that? So we're doing this thing this week with Vic, with like this local charity that's in the area, and they look after like families that are in desperate need. And we gave a bunch of like Kmart vouchers, and the amount of families in the area that are literally coming in to get like a dozen eggs because that's the best form of protein that they can get in a cheap meal to give to their kids at night. And this is not me like having a go at you or having a go at anyone that's got money. Yeah, I think we've got different. We'll have it, and having money is not a bad thing. But what's your answer to someone that might look at your situation and say, like, Josh, you're in like the top, like certainly 1% or like 0.5% in terms of financial means. How ridiculous is it to be worrying about financial issues being the main thing that keep you up at night?
I'm not saying it's the main thing. I'm not saying financial issues are the main thing. I'm saying the lifestyle to support my family and current needs. So, for example, we've got Hannah's mum and dad are living with us at the moment. She wants to spend time back there. I love to have spend more time, have the kids spend more time over there. What keeps me up is how can I make all that work while still transitioning into a new career and doing something that I'm new, but I'm not like I appreciate the fact that I'm in a privileged position. But I've also worked hard for it too. The old saying in terms of my career and a footy career, like if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's not. You gotta sacrifice. You've got to work hard. So I appreciate what I have, and I think no one really knows what you've got or what you don't have, or what. I don't know if Tommy's supporting his dad and his mum and his sister. I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. You don't know what I'm doing either, and no one does. And I think that's Tommy's point. But I appreciate that. Like, I'm not going to bed crying at night thinking, "Oh, poor me." I'm not like that. But you ask me, is there anything that keeps me awake at night? It's more that, how can I make this work? Because we're in a
in a privileged position. How do you maintain it?
No, but I'm in a privileged position. What's a privileged position? Because I've worked hard and had a football career. Like, from a family point of view, like we've got a lot of challenges. You've got two people from opposite sides of the world and trying to bring that together in a family unit the way that I want it to be or know it to be. That's a challenge, trying to make that work. And it's just, it doesn't end. So, and it's not necessarily money, but it's might be time. Yeah.
How do you think you deal with a situation where, there'd be a long list and knowing your personality type, I doubt this happens to you, but a long list of people that have been super successful and had a lifestyle that, is up here, and then have, for whatever reason, lost it all. How do you reckon you deal with that?
If I lost it all?
Yeah.
I don't know. Man. I think one of my, from a personality point of view, a strength of mine is being able to just focus on what I can control, focus on what I need to focus on, the positive in any situation, and make it work, and focus on the fact. That's why having relationships is so important, because if you lose it all, you lose it all, but you've still got good friends, you've still got family that are there to support you. that
Yeah, if the
that's
relationship
our whole
are
point.
indeed built on the right things, and the ones that
Which I hope they are.
yeah,
No, I know they are.
yeah, no, I agree. This concludes the first part of this conversation. Check in next week where I'll release the second part of the discussion.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live.
Experience.